Want to locate that. Okay, it's going to many apps, it says.
Wonderful. I think we're live. And
Excellent.
we are live and with the wonderful Christopher Graham. Hello, Christopher.
Hello, Paul. I'm not sure about the wonderful bit. That's put a bit of pressure on me that I wasn't expecting. I'll do my best to live up to that, at least partly, anyway, hopefully.
I'm sure you will. Well, welcome everyone to IATEFL's Leadership and Management Special Interest Group live chat, LAMSIG Live. We are very lucky to be joined by Christopher Graham. He's an ELT consultant, trainer, author, speaker. In 2019, founder member of ELT Footprint and the new president of IATEFL. So yeah, I hope it was a nice, easy move into that new role for you, Christopher.
Well, I had a great mentor in Alex Popowski, the previous president, just outgoing president, who was a great support. I worked with her for a year, so it's not sort of full immersion in that sense. Nothing, mind you, I've only been doing it for 6 days, so there's time. But no, I mean, the system we have is very sensible because the incoming president is mentored by the current president, and so the process. And I'm president for 2 years, and
Yeah,
in my second year, I'll be mentoring the next incoming president. So it's a very solid system, I think.
a
But
wonderful handover system, isn't it?
yeah, it works very well.
Cool. And just that in itself, I think, is a very useful takeaway for all us leaders and managers as well, as you know, in our system. Um,
Mm.
so tell us, I mean, you've been a director of studies, you've worked in management, you've led teams as well. But right now, what's taking up most of your time?
Well, I divide my life into my paid work, my day job, and my volunteering work. I'll start with the day job. Most of my work is in teacher CPD, particularly around trainer training, that is developing teachers who want to become teacher educators or honing the skills of existing teacher educators.
Mm.
And my main area of focus is areas of conflict and post-conflict. So where countries have been through difficult phases.
Wow.
I'm currently working on a project in Iraq. I was out there in just before in December, and been
Mhm.
working online with teacher educators since then. So that's a large chunk of my day job. I also do work around sustainability,
Mhm.
particularly again, back in teacher education, CPD for teachers who want to integrate sustainability into their lessons or to create lessons around sustainability. So I'm involved in that. So that's the kind of day job, the bit that pays the bills. In terms of volunteering, I'm involved in an organization called Green Action ELT as well, which originally started off driven by language schools in the UK around their sustainability issues around the way they work. It's become a bit more global now. So we run webinars and bits and pieces, small conference arranging in the summer. I also volunteer. I'm on the board of an organization called Eve, which works around mentoring female teachers from around the world, working with teacher associations who want to become presenters at local and international conferences. So we have a bunch of mentors or volunteers. So I'm on the
Mm.
board of that with three other people.
Wonderful.
And of course, my work with IATEFL. So I'm about 50% volunteering and 50% earning a living. And it's a bit complicated sometimes, but you find a way.
I was going to say, and very little time for yourself, although you appear to be a keen photographer as well.
I'm a very keen photographer. Yeah, I combine things. It's surprising what you can get done if you sort of just crack on with it. I mean, I'm fairly lazy anyway, so it's the
Well,
focus of lots of things to do keeps driving me forwards.
well, I think with everything on your to-do list, the lazy doesn't come into it. I
You'd be
think
surprised.
motivated and focused and passionate about what you're doing, which
Mm.
clearly comes through. Um, so tell us about thinking back now. How did you get into leadership and management? I mean, did you come up through the ranks as a teacher, or how did?
Well, it's an odd sort of story for what we call, for want of a better word, my career. I was a teacher in the UK and in Italy, a EFL teacher in private language schools
Yeah.
as I say, in Hastings, where I was born, and in Londden, and in two places in Italy for a while. When I came back to the UK, from Italy, I didn't quite know what to do, so I taught for a year at International House
Oh,
in what was then Piccadilly, when it was still in Piccadilly, which was a great fun time to be there.
that's
Lots of
yes. Well, I did
people who've
myself.
now become legendary, actually, who were working there. Actually, one thing, looking back at those IH days, I don't know too much how UK runs itself now. But they had a rotating director of studies system. I don't mean the director of studies rotated. I mean they moved around. I forget what the period of service was,
Okay, right.
which was a really nice. I did. It's sort of similar to the thing I was saying with IATEFL earlier, that people learn from each other in the
Yep.
role, or
Yeah.
going into the role, and share going out of the role. And I remember at the time, even though I was a young teacher, didn't really think about such things. That was actually a really nice approach
Brilliant.
to that kind of middle management tier,
Yeah.
with obviously the principal above, but the
Yeah.
director stuff was
Yeah.
rotated. Quite fun. So I was there, and then I had a slightly odd journey because I decided that I didn't want to work for anybody else, and so I set up a consultancy. Working at, we recruited teachers, ran a whole range of ELT projects around the world, and I did that for about 15 years, running my own business, and we had about 100 or so teachers working
Wow.
for us overseas. So it was all what we now call remote management.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a completely untrained manager. Like most people in the LT, it must be said, it's not uncommon, is it? You kind of suddenly someone says, right, you haven't got a
It's your
classroom
turn.
any,
Yeah.
yeah, you haven't got a classroom anymore. There's a desk. Go and sit
Yeah.
behind it and make big decisions. So
Yeah.
that kind of, even though I was one of the shareholders, I was still involved in that. But in terms of language schools, long and boring story. I opened my first English language school in Azerbaijan, in Baku, quite a long
Oh,
time ago, which I started with a business partner. And that grew, expanded across into Georgia, right across the Caucasus, as far as the Black
brilliant.
Sea, then eventually into Russia, and then into Kazakhstan. I mean, I sold my shares there something like 15 years ago, something more than that. But I ran those schools hands on. We
Mm.
had eight schools and a whole bunch of teachers, mainly local teachers, a few teachers from the US or the UK. But again, it was very instinctive, and
Mm.
I think a lot of ELT managers are instinctive
Mm.
managers. They're just people that think, yeah, I can actually,
Mm.
especially when you work for other people. I'm not saying that your previous manager was lousy, but I think by watching the way that you are managed, you think, well, that's an approach, but
But
oh,
yeah,
I
I
wouldn't have
wouldn't
done
mind
that.
touch upon it. Would you say though that the skills you picked up as and developed as a teacher
Mm,
helped you in management? I mean, you said about observation. So we observe our peers in teaching, but you do the
mm.
same as a manager and go, I'll take that idea, but I'll make it my own, adapt it, and tweak it. You think that
Well,
there?
I think as a teacher, for a good teacher, surely the ears are the most important thing you've got, ears and eyes. And I think
Mm.
listening to students and thinking, we've been doing this activity for 15 minutes. They haven't got it, have they? They really don't know what's going on. And too many teachers want to just, keep on digging themselves into a hole rather than saying, this is not working.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Let's look at this from another way. So, and I think that is what I've done by watching people either managing me or managing other people, thinking, well,
Mm.
that's, I say, that's a way of doing it. But maybe if she'd done that, okay. So I
Mm.
think it's watching and kind of processing, but also it's being it is listening to people, it just not just when you're watching them, but in conversations and thinking, teachers, there is often that, not barrier, but there's that I'm a teacher, I'm a manager distinction, and
Mm.
that worries me, because I think
Mm.
managers have got to keep that high degree of empathy that you need to teach, and just transfer that up into management. So
Yeah.
constantly thinking, there's a reason the teachers are having trouble with this, or they're not happy with that, and
And what yeah,
what
what
can I
might
do?
that exactly, yeah, yeah.
And also being straight to sometimes say, I understand this is difficult, but there's nothing I can do about
Yeah,
it. It's
yeah.
just, there it is. We'll do
We
what
have
we
to
can.
push through it and find
Yeah, I think so.
solutions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the case
Mm.
sometimes. Yeah.
It's an interesting part. I mean, there was one school owner I worked for many years ago, and I remember he walked into my office as I was academic manager at the time, and it said, "I just feel like I'm working for them instead of them working for me." And then he stopped and went, "Yeah, but I suppose that's what it is." And I kind of went, "Yeah, didn't you realize?" And he went,
When you signed up.
"Yeah." But so I think that there's a bit of both, of course, but
Mm,
I think it's certainly realizing. And we were talking earlier, weren't we, about that idea of empowering and taking from. I don't like to say bottom up because bottom means sort of there's a
mm.
hierarchy, and that's not what I mean. But really listening. You said, we have two ears and two eyes for a reason and only one mouth, and that's
I think the receptive skills, take it back to language teaching, the receptive skills are just so important. Obviously, the processing skills as well. But it's not difficult to find managers sometimes. You think you're not really listening because if you were, that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
And the teachers know that wouldn't have happened. They know you're not listening, and then you've got a potential crisis. I think people
Mm,
realize because it's not just listening, but I think it's listening, following up, saying, "Okay, I understand. This is what I'm going to do."
yep. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
a great believer in saying, okay, I'll do this, this, and this. I can't do that, but I can do this. And
Mm,
people think,
mm.
okay, he's on it. Fine. He's gonna try and fix it in some
Exactly.
as far
Mm,
as possible. It's
mm.
when people just say, okay, and that's it. No, I want to know what you're going to
Stops
do
there.
about it.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
Which is our role, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, thinking about then your pre-manager, pre-leader
Mm,
self, before you got
mm.
into that role, or before you were nudged into that role, what advice would you give that pre-manager self if you could
That's
go?
an interesting question. My cynical side would be to say, don't do it. But I don't know. I think that I'm still a teacher. I mean, I don't teach students.
Mm,
I haven't taught students for a long time, other than
mm, mm.
very, very briefly. Because I think, for example, working as a teacher educator, you're still teaching. They're
Yeah.
just older, probably, more likely to disagree with you. All these kinds of things. And working with adults is a different story, but you're
Mm,
still teaching. And working with IATEFL, I mean, I have because of my age, no more than that. I have experience, and I still think I'll talk to people in the SIGs or in other parts of IATEFL and
mm.
say, "Well, I'm never trying to do that. If you, and what I did was this, it might not work for you, but why not give it a try?" That is still teaching
Yeah.
in a very different way from slogging through the first conditional with a bunch of you know unhappy Italian teenagers, which is what I was doing. But actually, it's still teaching. So
Mm,
I think stay a teacher. Don't forget that because being able to be a teacher it's such a thing. It's such a privilege, really.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Wow,
And
that's a
one of my I have a lot of pet peeves, and one of my pet peeves is teachers who say, "Oh, I'm just a teacher. I'm only a teacher." What do you mean
oh,
you're only a teacher? No one's
isn't
going to say, "Oh, I'm just a brain surgeon." It doesn't work
yeah,
like that. It's a different skill set, but
exactly.
you
Well,
don't save lives necessarily, but
mm,
it really annoys me that because it's such a privilege to be able to do what we do. And as I say, keep doing that from as you do go up the management ladder or you go into teaching
mm.
development or to publishing, whatever you go into, you're still teaching, you're still
It's
sharing
yeah,
your
yeah,
knowledge. Yeah.
yeah, and the teacher produces every other job on the planet, doesn't it? Yeah. So wow.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
it's such a thing to be really, and
Mm.
I'm only a teacher.
Yeah.
That may be partly a British thing. I don't know how it is in Spain or other parts of the world where I think where teachers have a higher status, so you wouldn't hear that I'm only a teacher.
Mm, mm. I
But
think
I
it and
don't
it
know.
yeah, and it was brought up in the conference, the IATEFL conference in Edinburgh recently as well, whereby depending on where you're teaching, you as in what sector of teacher,
Mm,
are you an ESOL teacher? Are you a state secondary
mm,
school teacher? And that's a status thing as well, isn't it?
mm.
That changes, but still,
Yeah,
teacher
absolutely.
is
It's an interesting thing how teachers, especially English teachers, are viewed in that
mm,
culture.
yeah, yeah.
I've worked in a lot of countries, some places. It's a thing to be. English teacher. Whoa,
Mm,
it's a thing to be. That's a good
yeah.
conversation starter. In other places, I'm only a teacher.
Mm,
You know,
mm,
so
yeah,
it's
yeah,
I
yeah.
think through. I think.
So, but something we can continue to push to change as well.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it is a need for change. Actually, to pick teachers up and say, "What do you mean you're only a teacher?" To actually go back at them and they say, "Oh, he's right. Yeah, I'm not only a
Yeah,
teacher. I'm a teacher."
yeah, yeah. Making a big impact on everybody.
Mm,
So, thinking about okay, leadership management. Teaching is leadership and management, as well, of
mm,
course. But
mm.
maybe at a sort of school or institution level. Um, can you tell us about a problem you've had as a leader or manager and how you dealt with it?
I think. Well, yeah. As I say, I owned and ran a small chain of language schools in the Caucasus and eventually in Russia,
Mm.
so basically post-Soviet economies. And the challenges I had there, a lot of what we might call intercultural challenges
Oh, right.
that
Yeah.
I struggled with. for example, around views of time, the liquidity or otherwise of time, uh,
Yeah.
I think people classes were regularly starting late, people were arriving
Oh,
late, all this kind of stuff, which, from my little tiny little Anglo-Saxon brain, now come on, it says the class starts at 10,
yeah,
therefore it was
that's the start.
reasonable to
Yeah.
assume the teacher will be there 10 minutes before, the students 5 minutes before. But no, people wandering in at 10 past 10
Wow.
and how finally with it was particularly bad in one of the schools, and I had a chat with the director of studies who was local, and I said to her, you have to understand my view of time is this. And we had a really grown up conversation. She said, well, my view of time is that.
Ah,
And they were completely different. She
completely
said,
different.
I thought, but this guy's, he's always like, oh, because he's got problems at home. Okay, fine. But
Mm.
so I think that kind of managing across cultures,
Mm. Mm.
particular culture that I wasn't particularly familiar with, but was by the end of it. Um, I found that very, very challenging. My response eventually, after quite a few weeks of angst, was to sit down and use a dreaded conversation, dreaded sentence. We need to talk. And
Okay.
actually, she said, "I had no idea that's how you thought about time because
Wow.
it's not like that here.
So you just automatically assumed, obviously, that
Why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't she? I suppose
yeah,
you
you
sit
were
down.
thinking like her,
Yeah."
and she thought, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
I said, well, I really don't like it when people like, well, we don't like it when you're constantly doing this.
Ah.
Okay, so we found a way, and I think it's having the courage, or maybe it's the confidence, to have grown-up conversations to say, look, we've got an issue here,
Mm.
right? Rather than letting it fester, let's sit down, cards on the table, cup of coffee, several cups of coffee, away we go.
Yeah.
And we found a way. It wasn't a comfortable conversation at the beginning,
Yeah. No, of
but
course.
it's more comfortable than just letting it fester,
Fester and then
which it
explode.
will.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
So how far then do you think it's very important to phrase? You mentioned the dreaded phrase of we need to talk, but then um, just how you use certain words, certain terms in those difficult conversations, because it is all about finding the adult conversations. Listen, this is a difficult one, but we're both friends, but we're just having a difficult conversation right now. We know we're going to find a solution somehow. How we're
Mm.
going to get there, we don't know, but we need to begin by talking. I mean,
I think phrasing is important, but I think from the manager's point of view, um, how can I put it? Showing that you're human. And that
okay,
may seem a very
yeah,
weird thing to say.
no,
I mean,
no,
school managers are human.
mm,
One or
mm.
two I've met over the years, I'm not sure about, but most of them are human.
Yeah,
But showing a little bit of not frailty, but a little bit about yourself, saying,
yeah, yeah, consistency,
maybe I am being a little bit too tricky on this or a little bit too tough on
yeah,
this. But from my point of view, is this, but also encouraging the other person to absolutely put their cards on the table.
mm.
And that
Without
can take quite a
judgment.
long time. Yeah,
I
exactly.
think that
Yeah,
from your side, I think that's the gives them that space, doesn't it, to do so when you go, look,
yeah. Well, therefore I'll tend to do it first. Say, look, this
yeah,
is where I'm coming from. This is what and that allows them time because there is always potentially always a status issue or a kind
yeah,
of hierarchy issue. So
yeah,
the person who is most senior, whatever that means, I think it's for them to open up first,
yeah,
and then the other person, oh, well, he's done it. I'll tell him what I
and set
think.
the scene.
And then
Interesting.
when you know what you both think, then it's much
Mm,
easier to fiddle
mm,
around with the buttons, as it were, and find a way
yeah,
forward.
yeah.
It's
I mean,
it's yeah, go on. Sorry, yeah.
no, 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 go on, please carry on.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's something we sort of talked about earlier about managers who mandate and managers who create movements
Yeah.
or encourage movements. I mean, in terms of the whole sustainability thing,
Hmm.
there was a piece I read in Harvard Business Review a few years ago. I didn't normally read Harvard Business Review, but I was. And the piece made it was talking about changing cultures within it wasn't about schools or language schools, it was
Yeah.
about organizations, but it said there are ways of changing cultures. One is by mandate. We're going to do this. This is how it's going to be.
Mm,
Fine, maybe in some situations, particularly the large corporate, the more corporate situations.
mm,
But it said the way to really get change is to create by creating a movement. Now the managers might seed that movement. They might
yeah.
just sort of drop little ideas into
Yeah.
conversations or into
Uh-huh.
meetings or into I don't know newsletters or things. But I think in terms of getting sustainability into schools and into institutions, spotting the enthusiasts, finding out the people in the staff room, in the corridors who are really talking about, okay, that's a book about
Yeah,
sustainability.
yeah,
Or is there anything there you can maybe bring into a CPD session or staff
yeah.
meeting next week? And
Mm,
then that movement starts to grow. I mean,
mm,
like you, I don't like the top down, bottom up thing, but we know what we mean. It's
yeah.
not necessarily being hierarchical, but I think so much management can be more movement driven than mandate driven.
Mm,
I
mm,
think a lot of people, I understand that in ELT there are large, the more corporate organisations or multi-tiered
yeah,
education
yeah.
institutions who have a lot of top-down policies. That may be because of their compliance in various aspects of what they do, legally or otherwise. But
Hmm.
down at the school level, I'm
Yeah.
deliberately saying down at the school level, there's much more scope for saying, okay, you too, you talk a lot about sustainability. You've got climate marches, don't you?
Mm, mm,
What can we do? Let's form a committee. Let's form a working group. What can we do?
yeah.
And so the thing grows without people being told, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, it's much more organic,
Yeah.
natural. Well, I mean, if we were to transfer that idea, that concept to a classroom setting, you might say, well, it's exploring the emergent language from the student, isn't it? It's
Exactly what it is.
standing back and having a look and go, what are they talking about? Let's explore that.
But
Um,
being prepared to sometimes seed things a little bit, or as I say, just to
drop the
drop, or just
seeds.
to
Yeah,
guide a bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That
And I think that, and then you've got real enthusiasm because I mean, in terms of sustainability, there are plenty of teachers out there who really do want to get involved, but feel, oh, well, that's something they have to do, whether they are upstairs, whether upstairs is,
yes,
or that's a
yes.
management thing. Well, it's not a
Mm,
management thing. In the right context, the manager should say, "I'm delighted you've approached me about that. Okay, let's talk.
mm,
Can we make
mm.
a green working group? Can we do some sustainability, our school sustainability club? Can we do some growing in the school playground or courtyard or something? Well, bike racks, that's a good idea. Whatever it is comes
What? Yeah.
out of that. And the manager has got automatic buy-in almost because it's come up from
Yeah,
the whole
that's
school
true.
community.
I mean, and the other thing that I guess all managers and leaders think about is that the chimp, have I got that extra monkey on my shoulders or not? But they say, well, actually, if you guys are passionate about this and you want to do it, just tell me how I can help. But it doesn't really kind of give an extra job to me, essentially. Whereas, as you say, if it's top down, I'm imposing, I have to keep an eye and make sure
That's
things.
another thing. I mean, I think we need to give people tools sometimes. They might say, okay, we'd like to form a sustainability working group, but we need 2 hours, 3 hours a week,
Yeah,
whatever it is. Okay,
yeah,
I'll facilitate, I'll find you the time, I'll
yeah,
find you a room. Okay, you need some resources, you need subscriptions to this. Okay, I'll arrange that. I'll give you the tools. And
yeah,
can I pop in occasion? I'm not going to come to every meeting, but can I pop in sometimes and
yeah,
have to see
yeah.
what's going? Fine. But I think it does take a certain amount of courage on the part of managers. It's a funny thing, actually. I mean, working with teachers, teacher education role, there's always a lot of discussion around teacher talking time. It has been forever. I don't worry about it as much as I used to of listening to people like Hugh Dello, who says that actually it's not necessarily a bad thing, teacher talk. That's another discussion. But teachers are, I think are quite scared of silence sometimes. And if I'm talking, I'm in control. It's fine. Look, I'm talking. The fact nobody's listening to you. It's neither here nor there. I'm talking, therefore I'm in control.
Mm,
It's a
mm.
belief. It's a bit like that with management, isn't it? If I'm saying, right, do this, we need a policy. Do this. I'm in control. Whereas
Mm.
creating that movement, there's some silence
Yep.
while your colleagues are working away on something, developing something, and you occasionally supporting them and coming in.
Yeah.
And it takes a bit of a nerve to do that, I think.
Confidence. You're right,
Yeah,
definitely,
yeah.
doesn't it? To say, well, I'm okay with things being organic and not
Mm,
having that tight control over something. Because if I have a tight control over something, it means certain things can't breathe.
mm,
And
absolutely.
yeah, I think
And
that,
it's the same with teachers talking. If I'm talking, it's all
yeah,
okay. But if there's silence, silence actually
yeah,
is because the students are trying to figure out what to
yeah.
do next. Language learning requires the
A bit of
concept of thinking.
processing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and when you're sort of banging on at them still,
It's
then
just,
they're just, what
oh,
am I supposed to listen? Am I listening to you? Am I
yeah,
figuring out,
yeah,
what to do
yeah.
down here?
Yeah.
And I think it's a bit like that with management. Just take a step back, but just know if you think something is going, tragically in the wrong direction. Because actually, guys, I don't really think we
Yeah, I
can
could see the train
put
about.
palm trees on the school roof because we live in Scotland. That's not a good one. But we could grow potatoes in primary school. Who knows? Kids stop
Yeah,
growing things up. Yeah,
it's a
all that sort of stuff. That
that's
level of guidance. But I
that's
don't
a
know.
good.
I think it does take some confidence, whether that
Mm.
comes with age or possibly with character or just I don't know. That's another discussion for
Yeah,
another
no,
time.
it's a good point. Or experience in management, that thing that, well, I can see this team moving in this way. I'm not sure how it's going to pan out, but having previously experienced another team doing something similar, yeah, they seem to be okay. But do you not think it's also a lot about, those emotional intelligence of reading teams, reading people, reading groups as well
I think there's that, and also organizational culture. Because if you look at a lot of the kind of
yes.
emergent, the tech companies in particular,
Mm,
at least on paper, reality may be rather different, are very much bottom up. They have their
yep.
my son works for a large AI company. He's a pod leader. How about that? They don't have
Right.
teams; they have
Interesting.
pods. He's
I've
leading
never heard of.
multiple pods. No, I quite don't know quite what it is, but anyway, I'm very happy that he is. But his organisation is very, very much they would say bottom up. The initiatives come
Yeah.
upwards.
Okay.
Now, whether the reality is actually that, I don't know.
Mm.
But I'm wondering. I mean, you said your point, I think you're right about experience. But most of the people in his company, including very senior roles, are under the age of 30 or 35. They're
Well,
typical. It's a tech relatively new startup. The two
okay.
guys who started both in early 30s. My son's 26.
Mm.
They're all young, so they don't have what I might consider to be. They haven't been in the trenches. They haven't sort of
Yeah, okay.
trudged
Yeah.
for 20 years. You're probably right about experience, but I think that the fact that the corporate culture is being shaped in that way
Yeah, yeah.
is and I think I don't think ELT is there yet by quite a long way. I think we're
Mm.
still.
Mm.
I don't know. It's fascinating to hear what he says that they're all very very young. Well, it's a bit young to me anyway. They're in their 20s and 30s with pretty big responsibilities.
Mm.
Without he's a pod leader and he's
Yeah.
he's got a pod in Canada, a pod in Austria, a pod somewhere else. But he's not ever been a manager in the traditional sense.
Although that's what he's getting now, that
That's
experience.
what he's doing. He's become
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. So
Bang,
you've
bang,
become,
just like that. But there's
yeah.
not. They don't seem to make the fuss about it that we do.
But do you
His
think,
management. He doesn't talk about
yeah,
management. He'll just say, "It's Peter. What's Peter? Oh, he owns it. He owns. Oh, he's a shareholder. Okay, fine." It's just very
yeah.
flat. But I said the reality may be different. It may be like that when things are going well. When
I
they're
see.
not going well,
Things change.
I don't know.
Yeah.
For them, things seem to be going well at the moment. But
That's a good point.
it's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'm very aware of all the time I'm stealing from you. And thank you
No,
very
that's
much.
what I don't. I'm fine.
I think my last comment though is
Mm,
something I'm seeing more and more emerging into teaching and therefore and management is
mm,
the need or the usefulness of teachers and managers to adopt more coaching skills
mm,
and a coaching approach. I mean, you were saying that idea of standing back, seeing groups working
mm.
together, and just asking questions and seeing how, where that goes. So it comes from them, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I would say coaching and mentoring. I mean, the two together
Yes, yes,
actually,
yeah, yeah.
even though they're different tasks, there is some commonality. And I think, yeah, I mean, just in the classroom, the yeah, as you say, setting a task, stepping back, being the guy from the side, or the cliche is it, listening, watching. Okay, they have no idea what's going on. I'll go and sit with them for 2 minutes. Oh, they're fine. I can leave them.
Yeah.
They're getting on with it. These
Mm.
guys are completely lost, so they need a little bit of
Got to help
support
them.
from
Yeah.
me. And I think absolutely right. And it's the same with management.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
but there's a big but. I think both in the classroom and in the staff room there are either for students or for people in the school community other than students. There is still an expectation in some cultures, maybe in
Yes.
most cultures. I want to be. Tell me what to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Almost students saying, "Okay, teach me.
Yeah.
Bring it on. Here, where is it?" Well,
Yeah.
actually, I'd like you three to look at that text and underline all the X's, underline and find
Yeah.
it. Teach me.
No, just tell me. Just yeah,
Tell me how to do it. And I think there's also that in staff rooms as well.
yeah,
Your management, you tell us what to do. You sort it, tell us what to do. Come on.
yeah, yeah.
And I think breaking that is partly cultural, I think, in
Hmm.
sense of geocultural. I think it's also part of some institutional cultures that are still
Yeah.
quite top down.
Hmm.
Ministries of education, for example,
Mm.
tend to be more conservative in that way. So it's not a given that the kind of slightly more laissez-faire, hands-off,
Mm.
tell me
Mm.
what you think will
Yeah.
work.
But
And that's something we need to deal with.
yeah, although it could in those cases ideally be a continuum in which you kind of you move depending on the situation, on the person, or the but yeah, I think an additional skill to be taken on by
Mm.
management leaders, definitely. Wonderful. Christopher, Graham, I've stolen far too much of
No,
your
you haven't. Don't
very
worry, I'm
valuable
fine.
time, and it's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you very much. So excellent takeaways, very useful advice for us all. Thank you very much, and
You're very welcome.
enjoy
Thank you. See
enjoy
you again
birthday.
somewhere.
Yes, I do
Thanks
look
so
forward
much.
to it. If not before, IATEFL in Brighton.
Sunny Brighton.
Yep.
Sun's guaranteed in Brighton. Well, I said it was going to rain all week in Edinburgh and it didn't rain once. So if I say it's going to rain in Brighton, it'll be sunny all week. So that'll be fine.
Brilliant. Excellent.
All the
Thank
best
you
to you, Paul. And good
very
luck with
much.
the marathon.